and welcome to a very special conversation today about gender and representation. My name is Jaguar and I've got some incredible guests with me today. We've got Tiger.
Hiya.
We've got Talia.
Hello.
And we have Leo.
Hello.
How are you doing, guys? We good?
Yeah,
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. I guess before we dive in, let's get to know everyone a little bit more. So Tiger, do you want to tell us who you are, what you do in the industry?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Tiger. I work in the music industry as an artist manager and a project manager and a marketer, kind of all things. And I co-founded a community group called ESEA Music. And we represent East and Southeast Asian artists and professionals in the industry.
Amazing. Great to have you, Talia.
Next. I never know what to say about myself. Well, I'm...
Who is she?
Who is she? I'm a musician and a DJ from Glasgow. I make electronic music predominantly, pop music, dance music.
Good to have you. And Leo?
My name is Leo. I am an artist, producer, writer, and I make bipolar pop. So I basically make tunes about not being right in the head because I'm not. And I also run a mental health music charity called White Noise. Ooh. I know, there's a lot going on.
Oh, but yeah, it's great to have you guys here. I'm Jaguar, I'm a DJ and broadcaster. I host BBC Introducing on Radio 1 Dance. I have a club night and label called Utopia. And just last year, I founded the Jaguar Foundation, and I've got it here with me. We put together the first of its kind report about gender in electronic music specifically, because it's a very male-dominated industry, and I've got some stats for you from the report. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Just to get the old blood boiling. So in the Jaguar Foundation report, we found that just 5% of dance music in the UK charts had exclusively female and non-binary artists. That is 5% in the charts. On the radio, less than 1% of tracks featured exclusively female and non-binary artists. In playlists on streaming services, it was 24%. And then in 2022, on festival lineups, only 28% of the acts were women and non-binary. But the good news is that it was up by 100% from 2018. What the trends show in the report is things are getting better, but as you can see, those are really, really low stats.
Really stark, aren't they?
Yeah. Okay, so I think it's really important that we have this conversation today, and like we're all strong women in the industry, and I feel like there's a lot of things we can do to like take positive steps forward, and we're gonna find all the answers out today. You ready? We're gonna solve inequality.
Oh my God!
But no, I think let's start then about how you all got into the industry, and I want to ask you, like, how did you know that you wanted to work in music, and kind of what's led you here today? Should we start with you, Tiger?
It's a good question. It was quite a while ago for me now, and I don't think I knew what the music industry was at all when I first kind of left university. No one in my family. I don't have like a creative network of people around me when I grew up, so I didn't even know you could get a job in music. So even knowing that there are jobs in music is like mind-blowing. So yeah, I wasn't really planning on it, and I kind of actually applied for a couple of jobs when I lived in Scotland, and I was kind of applying in loads of places, and I got an interview with Warp Records, and I really just about knew who Aphex Twin was. Honestly, so it wasn't electronic music that I was into at the time. So I think it was it's like one of those, you just try and find those openings, and I felt like if I could get an interview, I should just move to London.
Yes.
That's how silly I was, but I was young and I was like, it will be fine, you know? So yeah, it wasn't really my plan.
Okay, what about you?
It wasn't my plan either. I did
What
not.
was your plan?
I honestly, who knows at this point? I grew up very working class in like a little town, Scottish town called Kilmarnock, and then I got into art school in like 2017. And then I moved to Glasgow for art school, and I was studying painting, and then I began DJing when I was studying there. And then I kind of like transitioned from DJing to making music just because I got really bored. It's like, I'm sick of playing other people's music, I want to play my own. But I never started out with the thought of going to be in this industry. I very much just kind of like accidentally found myself here, like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's kind of it, really.
I love it though. You come from like the kind of art school background.
Yeah,
And you
I
never
mean, like
expected to be here.
I've always been like creative, and I've always used my work as like an avenue to talk about things that I want to talk about. But it has, the medium in which I've done that has changed throughout the years. I just thought up until I was at least 18, 19 that I was going to be a painter. And then I was like, oh, right, the music stuff is actually like a thing. Because like my first like experience of the music industry was probably just like watching like awards on TV, like the Grammys and the Brits and stuff, and just watching people perform. I never thought that like I could like do it, you know.
You won a few awards last year.
Yes, I did. That's true.
BBC introducing Dance Artist of the Year.
I won a BBC award, an AIM award.
Oh, AIM as well.
Yeah.
Amazing, babes.
Thank you so much.
Leo, what's your journey? How did you realise you wanted to make songs, be an artist?
I just never really, how do I say? It's like a double negative. I couldn't not. Like it just always happened. And then, yeah, when I was a kid, I started learning guitar, writing tunes, blah, blah, blah. And then just kept doing it, and kind of, as time went on, kind of formed more of a vision and worked out what I want to say, how I want to say it, how I want it to sound. And yeah, I'm just cracking on. Like it's not really an option not to. So I just have to do it to get out what's in my head. So.
For me, I never thought I'd be a DJ or a broadcaster. I'm actually a very shy person, so like I'm still confused.
You do not give that vibe
I'm like
at
an
all.
extroverted introvert.
Right.
It's like
okay.
deep down.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I got into like DJing radio at uni and at Leeds, and I did an English degree and just always loved music. But then I started like raving, and I did student radio and kind of found my calling. But again, wasn't expecting to.
I feel like university student radio is so good.
It's
so many people go into it, you know, it's like such a like gateway into the industry.
Yeah, it's a good place. And as well, I think for me, like seeing people like Annie Mac on the radio, listening to, she was such an influence, I think, in electronic music, like, because it is very, you see, like, especially back in the day, it'd be like David Guetta, Fatboy Slim, if you Googled, like, who is a DJ. Well, yeah. But whereas, like, seeing Annie and, like, listening to her Friday night show, like, growing up was just so instrumental, and I actually saw myself in that place and thought, oh, maybe I could do that. And is there anyone, for any of you guys, who you kind of looked up to when you were, like, starting out?
I feel like I really struggled because I just couldn't necessarily like find. I could find people who showcased a part of me, but I could never find someone who fully had a rounded identity that I could identify with. It was always like kind of like a jigsaw mishmash of inspirations, which has definitely like changed as I've gotten older and as I've become more aware of myself. But yeah, like, I mean, like perhaps what we're going to talk about, the representation within kind of mainstream media is just like not really there. And it takes a lot to go and research and to find like underground artists that perhaps you could identify with. And I think I done that through like Tumblr when I was like 14.
Oh, I used to love Tumblr.
All right. I never really looked at someone and was like, right, that's what I want to do, or that's who I want to be. It was like, okay, I want to be a bit of this person. I want to be a bit of this person. Yeah.
It's an interesting one. What about you?
I think for me, it wasn't so much a person, but I think when I was getting into music when I was a teenager, it was like NME was like this publication. You know, it was the publications, you know, that were really, especially when you're not from London and you're into this. There used to be a station called XFM that I used to like, I wouldn't listen to because I was in London, but they'd do like seed, you know, those kind of things, those extras where you were able to find out information, you know, where it wasn't just like all online, you know. So I think actually it was those kind of places that get you into being a music fan. And I think that exists in every generation and stuff, you know. And so, yeah, it wasn't so much a person. And also to add, I think when I joined the music industry, there were like there were hardly any women anyway. So like to have a, you know, women role model was like so rare. And I think it's only in the last 4 or 5 years that I've seen that in artists, you know, or, you know, more so now, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I think it's also quite easy to, like, when you are interested in more female artists or women within the arts, and whenever you yourself then go into the arts, it's always hard, because I think that when people ask that question, because you're two women, they're able to kind of like put you two together. So it then becomes a more of a like, oh, this artist wouldn't exist unless this artist exists. And it's not necessarily like that, but it's very much a thing that they do towards women.
Yeah, like,
I think in reality, like my experience is like my kind of non-male music friends, and there are some great males, shout out these two over there, see you. You know, like, but like my kind of like community and like sort of like, it's like a sisterhood of like, I've got like my gals like Helena Starr, Keisha, Nix, Effie, Elka. Like, I feel like for me, it's really, I really value having kind of like my little group, because you can kind of talk about things that have happened to you, like whether it's like a negative comment and you've got some from some like weird incel keyboard warrior, or like, or you know what I mean, just the people who understand what you're going through, and you can like directly like have those conversations with. Like it's not competitive in that way, I don't think. I think it's really special, you know.
That is special. I think just having somebody, when you say that thing, just acknowledge that it's real and that it exists, and that's, you know, and that's it. Not try and solve it, not try, you know, like all of that
just
stuff.
To feel heard and seen.
Yeah, and that's sometimes all you need, you know.
I want to talk about our like little communities, and community, like I think for all of us is such a important like word for what we do, and I think that's when the best like ideas and music comes out, is when you've got your communities. Like I know you've all, I don't know, do you want to talk about yours? I'm thinking like songwriting and
the pop world.
Production, right? In the pop world,
Yeah, so I think like I'm actually really lucky to work with amazing girls and non-binary people. Like I speak to a lot of my mates who are girls, and they're like, oh, I don't really get to work with a lot of girls. But I actually feel really lucky because I do. And my friend Katie Ray, like she's an amazing producer and songwriter. And probably about 2 years ago now, because she had this network of other girls and non-binary people that she would work with, and she put us all in this WhatsApp group. And now, like, we meet up and we talk about stuff, and like I messaged about something recently and I was like, does anyone feel the same way, because this is fucking horrible? And everyone was like, yeah, I get it, like it's not nice, but you know, we all go through it. And as you said, like it does help having people who just get it and who will just acknowledge it. And yeah, I feel really lucky to be able to have that like network of people who we're all like in the same kind of place, we do similar things, and we all just understand it. And I think like, yeah, there are things that I'll talk to them about that I wouldn't talk to guys about, just because like I don't even have to explain it with them. I don't even have to give it context, because they just get it. And yeah, it does make a big difference. And then I think when you're making tunes with those people as well, you're on like a deeper level. Like you can say something and they're like, yes, they just get it. Which, yeah, I think it just means that you make better music as well. Like that's my experience. Not all the time, but I think in general, if you're on a level with someone, you do just make better tunes, and you can go into stuff that maybe you wouldn't necessarily with someone who doesn't like have like lived experience of what you want to talk about, you know?
Tiger, what about you? Community?
Yeah, so I think community's been interesting for me, because I think with the change, you know, in the last few years, with the kind of Stop Asian Hate movement and the kind of, you know, rise in racism during COVID and stuff. So I think because of that, there's a kind of grouping of East and Southeast Asians kind of in activist circles that hadn't really existed, you know, in the more mainstream. From when I was growing up in the music industry. And I'm 40 now, and I was just like, the one thing that I haven't got is that community of those people in the industry. So I co-founded a group, maybe it's like a year and a half ago now. And when we started it, I literally had a spreadsheet, and I was trying to remember anyone who was East Southeast Asian who I'd met in the last 15 years in the music industry. And I wrote like 5 people down, and Hiroki, our co-founder, so there were 10 people on a list, and we had that meeting. And then from that, we just like met up, and then we just kept having these meetups. And then there's 250 members in the group. It's just like sometimes you can make your own community if that's lacking, and there will be other, and the need, as soon as we kind of launched and got going on our logo, like just the need for it was so apparent. And there's just so much we can do with that, you know, and like everything from representation to funding, but just the art that I think is already being created with all those artists who are doing it separately, but you're just like trying to help the whole thing grow, you know, grow bigger. And there just aren't enough Southeast Asian artists, you know, if you can name, there's like Rina Sawayama, there's Jack Jones, there's Griff. There's really a real lack of them. So it's not that they need the group, it's just giving them some of the, you know.
Like nurturing and building.
Yeah, nurturing's the right word.
So that eventually you're building something that can kind of enter into the mainstream space. And
I've got this kind of, it's been the way I've just changed working as well, is a bit like I want to work with more East and Southeast Asian artists, because there's just it's just very classic that a lot of artists have managers that are white men, and I know there are more of that, but it's just, and that can be very fruitful and nurturing, and they can understand, but there's something about, just like you said, like that lived experience. And then some of these artists make records about that lived experience, and I'm working with someone and you're like, I get it. And sometimes it's like, who are you making music for? It's for that, like, you know, the people that get you and really see you. So I think that has all existed in the group. So it's like been a really like, powerful thing to kind of be part of. You know.
Can you tell us the artists that you've been working with?
Yeah, so I work with Rina Sawayama. So I work with her mainly in Japan and Asia. So I work with her, which has been amazing. And just, I think it's been an amazing journey to have an Asian queer woman just in media, full stop. And like, I'm bisexual. It was just like this, all of her songs that she put out. And there was a moment when I was leaving the previous record label, and I was like, if there's one artist I work with, I want it to be her. I manage an artist called Lucinda Schwa, who's got a record coming out with 4AD. She's Chinese, British, and her record, again, is just all about that experience of being mixed. And, you know, and just those stories have not been told, you know, in that way. And then I work with Yeji as well, and her record that's coming out soon on EXA is all about anger and repression of anger within Asian women, and letting that all out, and the therapy that is, and owning it.
Yeah, so important. I can't wait to hear the Yeji record.
I'm excited. It's great.
Yeah. And actually on that, like we were talking actually about it before we started recording, and about kind of, because you're doing very well, and you kind of come up through the underground, and now for things like festivals, it's a really interesting kind of experience to play these big mainstream festivals, because, you know, like festival lineups are so like broad, and then I found like I'm kind of trying to realign what gigs I'm playing at the moment, because I found like last year I was playing like loads of like big gigs, but then I was a bit like, oh, these aren't really like nourishing my soul that much, because often I'm like the only girl or like person of colour or queer person on my lineup or anything, and it can be a bit of a sausage fest. And like, if I'm honest, which no disrespect,
they should start that festival. And then no one could complain about the lineups.
There's the idea.
There we go. I'm glad we got
sausage
to that.
Fest playing next year. But do you know what I mean? And like, how do you feel similar? Like when you're playing these big gigs?
Jarring.
It's jarring.
I think because this is like the only job that I've ever had. Like I went into this just like as soon as I finished at art school, and so you come across things and you think, oh God, that's annoying or whatever, but I'm just so lucky to be like doing this as a job in the first place. So sometimes I feel like I can't moan, but also I could be booked to play X, Y, and Z. I won't know the lineup until the lineup is like announced, because like they never really tell you who's playing, because they're still in the process of booking everyone. And then I look and then I see, oh, okay, only trans person, only woman, only black person. But I could write to my agent and be like, I want you to say this to this person, but really, what is that going to do? Because they can't change the lineup, can they? It's already been announced, it's already been changed. What they can do is take on board what I've said, but they might not do that next year. And so ultimately, it's not about us doing the work, like the people at the top have to do the work, but it's trying to show them how to do the work. And it's like, this actually isn't my shit to deal with. Like, it really isn't. And like, I'm actually bored of like talking to people and saying this, because you should all know this already.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
like, not to go back to the report, but
But to get the book
we talk
back
about
out.
this in the report, and something I have, and there's actually a template in here and on the Jaguar Foundation website for an inclusivity rider.
Yeah, I have one of those.
Do you? It's a complex one, and like, if anyone doesn't know, inclusivity rider is like, it's like a clause in your booking contract, and like my one says, I'm only going to pay this gig if there's at least another woman, trans or non-binary, person of colour or LGBT person on that lineup, and it's just something in there to be like, this lineup has to be a bit diverse, otherwise we're not going to consider it.
Well, I recently had an experience with a festival that I won't mention because I've still yet to play the gig, but they had announced a couple of artists before me, and then they announced me, and then like all the announcements for the previous artists were like, it was like very plain Jane. It was like, this artist is playing, and it's like this kind of music. Oh my God, when they announced me, it was like, we love diversity, LGBTQ, trans, blah, 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 blah. And I looked at my phone, I was on the train, I was like, what the actual fuck? So I messaged my manager, I was like, this needs to be sorted, because they've completely tokenized my identity and are now using it as like as a way of like not only promoting their festival, but to show that they're like quote
diversity washing,
inclusive. And then basically my manager got in touch with the festival. They changed the post to align it to all the other posts, which was good. But then I was still just kind of like, this can't happen. Like, that people can't think that they've done a good job just because they booked me because I'm black and trans. Like, it doesn't work like that. Like, I'm there to play music. I'm not there to showcase my identity, because yes, I do happen to have this identity, but that does not affect the art that I make. But for some reason, people want to think that it does.
So I think there's something in like them not
Let's ask the
even
audience.
and then presenting it in that way and not even consult. You know, there's no conversation. It's like,
and
just
also
be
like
honest
really,
and open
it's really
about it.
Embarrassing as well, because it's like, I'm so much more than like what I look like or how I happen to like exist in this world. And I think that because people sensationalize marginalized identities so much, they think that they have done some kind of like amazing job just because they've asked them to play, and it's like,
it feels tokenistic, I think, and it is. And I'm always in this like conflicting thing, because I've definitely played gigs or been booked things where I've then been like, oh wow, I feel like I'm just ticking a box. But then on the flip side, it's amazing
like,
that you're in that
you're
space.
there in the first
and then,
place, yes,
if we're talking about
exactly.
representation, like, you know, there might be people in the audience who are going to that event to see you, and they might not normally go, and then people will feel seen.
And also, to play devil's advocate, like, some people try to do good things and they just make themselves look bad. Like, it comes from a place of genuineness, but they don't necessarily know how to navigate it in like a politically correct, or like even just like what's the word I'm looking for?
human,
Etiquette, or like to have like etiquette and things.
decent,
Yeah.
human respect,
Normal.
Yeah, just yeah.
Not really weird. Yeah.
And maybe they don't think about it enough.
Because they don't have to,
They don't
because it's
have
not
to.
on their radar.
Yes, exactly.
That's the thing. It's not even something they ever consider. Like, if you've got a load of old men and they're
Sausage fest.
yeah, if you have
Sausage
a team that is a sausage fest, then they're just not going to think about, you know, any kind of like, I don't know, it's just not on their radar. So why would they consider it? Because they've never had to in their life before.
Yeah.
But this is the thing, this is why I actually kind of wish we had a guy on this in this conversation with us. Want to step forward? Anyone
want to come in?
Get on in? No. But because I feel like I've seen this with the report, like, we live this experience every day, right? If you're not a cis male, like, you know what we're talking about. And I feel like the people who really need to have these conversations, listen to us, read things like the report, actually do the work, are the men in power. And they are often, very often, the CEOs, the club owners, the people booking the festivals, and that's what we need to change.
It's interesting as well, because it also takes these men, these people, to work with artists to then understand the experience, you know? Like, I'm pretty sure half the people that I work with wouldn't understand what it's like to be trans, what that means as in terms of like the music industry, and how to express yourself as an artist, and what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. Like there's so much more that I need to think about as someone with this identity compared to like someone else.
Yeah. Obviously we can pinpoint the things that are wrong with that, and we can say, oh well, you know, if it's run by a certain type of person, then that results in this, and that results in like the industry we've got at the moment. I think it's really important to address the issues, but also not to kind of demonise some people if they're dodgy, but not demonise everyone and make them feel attacked, because you're not going to get anywhere. So I think like when you did the presentation, there were loads of old white guys there. I was like, this is amazing. This is really positive, because they didn't feel like, oh, I shouldn't be in that room because that's not my space. They felt like, oh, okay, this is what needs to change, and it's being presented to me in a really accessible, like positive way, and so I'm going to turn up. And I think that facilitates change so much more than being like, you're bad.
I think also like experiencing people like that who say things like that, it's like people feel threatened at the thought of diversity because they've never like experienced that. And so when someone perhaps who doesn't identify with any of like the identity or whatever comes along, they immediately feel threatened because they think, oh, but if this person exists, then perhaps this might affect the way that I think about something, or this and this and this. It's like it all comes from a place of like personhood rather than like this. I mean, of course, they're probably like to some degree like ignorant or whatever, but where that ignorance comes from, it's coming from within themselves rather than a direct kind of like hatred towards one specific person.
Fear as well.
Yeah, it's a fear on like perhaps what your existence would mean for the world, or the way that they live their life.
I have a question. So what do you think, like, I guess in this sense, like cis male allies, like people who do want to help, but they might be a bit scared, which, you know, is kind of fair enough if it's completely uncharted territory, but they want to do something. What do you think, if you want to be an ally, what can you do?
I think
Give us money.
money first. Our PayPal's up.
There's a link below.
No, I think, and this is industry side, not artist side, but I'm sure it'd be relevant. Is like, I really think that some of these CEOs should like not just hire diversity, right? They should hire the diversity of the people who are actually saying stuff and rocking boats and all that stuff. Because I just think most of the time, people who are going into those positions of power from a more diverse background are going in because they're maybe not, so, you know, it's easy. And I understand, it's like, if I ran a company, you're going to hire the people who agree with your opinions, when actually you should probably hire the people who disagree with you the most. It probably won't make your workday easier, but like that's probably more radical, and you're probably going to get more interesting change happening. And I think creating workspaces or an industry where you are allowed to, express these things without being demoted or whatever, you know. So I think that would be good.
I think they just need to find the energy to actually research and understand different perspectives and experiences. Because sometimes I'm just kind of like, we shouldn't be spoon feeding you what to do. You're a grown adult, you should be able to take the initiative to understand what to do yourself.
It's like that, getting over that bit that's like uncomfortable, and fear takes, just
bravery.
Yeah, and you're like, and it isn't on us to hold their hands over that. But I think we've all probably been in those positions ourselves. It's like, I don't get this, I feel uncomfortable, but I'm like, my brain hopefully is like malleable enough to like be open to another idea or another dimension, you know?
Well, right? I've definitely made mistakes.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, it kind of stings at the time, but if you show that it's come from a place of good intention, and you're going to learn, you're going to correct yourself, and so you can teach other people, genuinely, I would love to see that more.
Yeah. I think like researching, not like sitting down and reading an academic paper, but just like getting on Twitter, looking at some stuff, getting on Instagram, looking at some stuff, and actually making an effort to maybe, you don't even have to like get to know people in real life, but just to connect with things that are outside your box. Do you know what I mean? And just taking the time to actually consider people who are different and think like, oh, is there anything I can do, even on like just a really small level, just to kind of make a difference and maybe make someone feel a bit more comfortable or a bit more kind of considered.
I think also hire, well, if we're talking about people in positions of power, hire advisors or people that can actually talk to you about different things. Like, for example, in Scotland, we have the Scottish Trans Alliance, which go into different companies, organisations, and basically talk to them about how they can better create a more safe and comfortable environment for trans people. I think that's a really, really great thing. But people need to be aware that these things exist and take the initiative to actually want to do that for the people within the space. And it doesn't necessarily, and also just like hire people, like you said, like.
I was going to say I have one more thing for in terms of the pop world, all the female and non-binary producers, get them in the sessions.
Yeah.
They're sick. They're actually amazing. And like they're all bubbling like on this level, but because people aren't being like, oh, let's get you in this session, they're not getting the cuts to then elevate them higher up the ladder, but get them in sessions. Honestly, they're amazing. And it's like so frustrating. Like I see some of my friends who are doing incredible things, work their asses off, make amazing music, like objectively great tunes. And they're so versatile and they can do so much stuff. But then people will still be like, oh, should we get that guy that does, you know, paint by numbers, copy and paste? Oh yeah, cool. That's not interesting. That's not exciting. That's not pushing any boundaries. If you want a copy and paste, paint by numbers tune, then cool. But
I think that's a really good point as well. And I actually went on a bit of an angry Twitter rant yesterday. I just woke up and I was like,
so fresh.
I need to go look at it.
So fresh.
And like, it's just something I've personally noticed. It's kind of similar to what you're saying, is like when going through promos or even like from my radio shows or sets, like I listen to a lot of unsigned music, which mainly what I champion and play is unsigned. But the stuff that is getting signed, and I'm talking about not like primarily major labels, it seems to most of the time be white men, white cis men.
That's so depressing.
And I think to myself, hang on, I've just listened to 500 demos.
I just did a whole report.
And I've just done
and just like that.
Carrie Bradshaw. No, but
The white man.
literally. But I think to myself, I've just heard some incredible music, and like I pride myself in my radio show to championing, you know, and it is difficult to get like 50-50 gender balance every show. If I'm honest, that's not possible because there's just not as many tracks from non-men. But I pride myself on trying to really champion people who might not be picked up initially, and I have to ask the question, why does it seem to be that it's men who are getting signed? And I think about all the A&Rs I know, and I ask to myself, a lot of them are men from a similar background signing other men from a similar background. What do you think?
I think sometimes perhaps it's access as well, because I think I would not have been able to make music unless I had like access to like my student loan and just access to money, because I know that I wouldn't have been able to afford to do it by myself. Yeah, it's very expensive. And then also even just it creates this vicious cycle of, if you don't really necessarily see yourself within like the mainstream music industry or whatever, then you will be deterred to make music. But if women and non-binary people saw people like them in like big positions within the industry, it would then inspire them to think, oh, well, I could actually do this. Yeah. But like you're saying, when it's like a majority of men are just gonna like inspire other men.
Yeah,
So,
I think there's, I completely agree. I think there's also something about class as well, because the industry, you know, like I think it's like, who do we have running, you know, the country? It's like men telling us, you know, and it's like unlearning that bit when I'm in a room, when I'm going to say something compared to when a guy's going to stand up. And I've been through so many meetings where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I said that idea, but you just said it
louder.
Yeah. So it's like,
I feel like unless you point it out, people, they probably don't even realise. Like, again, I feel like you kind of stick to what you know, and like if that's what you know, you're going to look for those artists. But it upsets me because I see like artists, and a lot of them are women and non-binary, and they work so hard, they're funding their projects themselves, and they're the ones who need the funding and the exposure, and you know, whether it's a major label or an indie or publishing or whatever, they're the ones who should be having this industry backing.
I feel like people don't believe that women can do
Yeah,
things.
yeah, I think that is part of
genuinely
it.
it. Like they don't believe that we can actually do things and do it well. It's like especially when you're talking about more male dominated industries as well, people just don't think. And it's the same like when I started out DJing, and I think around Glasgow there was a buzz about like what my name was, but people just hadn't necessarily like met me yet. And then they would like meet me and be like, "You're Talia," and I'm like, "Hi, yes I am." And they'd just be so shocked because they wouldn't think that someone who looked like me could do that, or like kind of like give off this like amazing energy that people around the city will be talking about. It's
I think the same happens like on the industry side. Is like you can guarantee. I mean, it wasn't in the music industry, but my first job in music video production, I remember they were like, because I was like a runner in Soho, and they're very much like, "Do you want to be a director or a producer?" And I was like, "I don't know." And they were like, "You should be a producer," you know. And then years later, and then you get a job at a record label, and you're like, "I think I could be a good A&R," but you don't. I'm not going in there being, "Hey, I'm an A&R today," and they're just like, "Okay, we believe you. You're cool," you know. And it's just that feeling of, I guess, it definitely comes from my mum's like immigrant background. Is like, you're just lucky to be in the door. So you do anything, you organise, you do all this stuff around it, but you're not, you know, you kind of. And I certainly feel like worked in the industry 15 years. It's only the last year I'm like, I can make some decisions now. I should be freelance and like be my own boss and all these things. It's taken so, you know, because you feel like you have to earn your stripes. But there are managers who walk in, they're just like, I don't need to know what I'm doing.
But I think that's
you
like
listen to me.
I think that's kind of ingrained in like the societal, like especially I found that as a woman in my experience, you're told to like, just kind of look, smile and look pretty and don't be offensive and don't piss anyone off.
I like pissing people off.
And
It's
you
great.
do.
I do a lot. Some people don't like me.
But I think I want to be more like that, because I feel like I've been taught from a young age at school just to like kind of be good and don't rock the boat.
I think also when you don't necessarily have someone representing you, you can feel quite, I'll just take what I can get. Like, thank you for the crumbs, thank you for the crumbs. Like,
it's another club night.
And I mean, I am quite lucky in that like I have a team to negotiate for me, and so I've never actually had to like necessarily like involve myself in like proper negotiations, which I'm very thankful for. But I remember when I started out, even just talking about fees, for example, and what I thought I should be paid, and talking to promoters and things, and it's like, you just feel lucky to be doing it. Do you know what I mean? You don't necessarily want to don't want to rip the pish. Sorry. You don't want to like
upset anyone.
Yeah, and it's interesting, especially when you talk about finances as well. I feel like especially within the UK, we all shrink ourselves when we talk about money. We're like, okay, thank you so much for £1. Like, okay. We don't necessarily want to talk about our own worth, or we don't want to express what we think we're worth, because we're made to feel like talking about money is just something that you don't do. So keep it short and sweet.
I want to talk about kind of mainstream representation, and I want to talk about the Brits. We had the Brits recently, and they once again had the non-gendered Artist of the Year, but unbelievably this year there were no women, which was
unbelievable.
No gender, but all gender.
Yeah, it was a weird one, and it kind of made me sad to see Artist of the Year and just not have. They were all guys.
I think there's, I guess it also makes me think not just about the Brits as well, but the BAFTAs had a thing this year, right? Because no people of colour won any awards this year, and they'd had the BAFTA So White or whatever a few years ago, you know, and all these things. So I just think it just goes to show that they sometimes only fight for these, you know, inequalities, and things move forward, they can also move back. And I think for me, it was just a reminder that, you know, and even if they make it, you know, not to be too depressed, you know, it is moving forward, but it's like one step back, you know, and how we do that, and like. And so, yeah, to me, it's just part of a bigger, a bigger thing that we've seen as a pattern, with the Oscars and the Grammys and those kind of things,
How are we meant to like encourage more artists and creatives who are from like a marginalised group if they don't see themselves? If you're a little girl, a little black girl, and you want to be a singer, but then you see Artist of the Year, and then it's like you might not see yourself in that. There's a producer called Ghost, and he's got a 3-year-old daughter, and I did a DJ stream a few weeks ago with Mixmag, and I'm there with my braids, got this big purple dress on, living my best life, playing some lovely bassy sounds. Anyway, he sent me this picture, and it's so cute. It's like his little girl with her little afro, like watching the TV. I'm on the screen, and she's just watching it. And then sent me a video of her being like, "I want to be a DJ, and I'm gonna play all your songs, Daddy." And apparently, she like puts her little purple Disney princess dress on now, and like pretends to DJ and like runs around the house. And now she wants braids as well, which is quite funny. Yeah. But the point is, she has seen a DJ who looks like her, and that's incredible, right? Yeah. She now thinks. And maybe she could become a DJ because she saw herself in that space. And it's so important.
It's so important. I mean, that's, the power of popular culture is really real, to like, not to be too grandiose about it, but it can change, change opinions and change. And it is, so artists, and DJs that make that stuff, it's not just the one thing that you're doing, it's part of a bigger collective thing. Yeah. And it does have that power. So it is really important, Yeah.
I really want to talk about like being a parent in the industry. And Tiger, I know you are a parent. Yeah. You've got a
4-year-old.
And I think it's really important to talk about parenting and like, just again from my perspective, like I'm not planning to have any kids yet, but for me, like seeing Jam Supernova who had a baby, Annie Mac who had her baby, there's a B Traits has just had a baby, I think, as well, or was pregnant. Like, it's amazing for me to see like women DJs and women in the industry like have babies and then come back to work,
Yeah, it's like coming back to work a bit and like seeing that progression. I think, because it's like one thing making the decision to become a parent, but it's like the bit afterwards when you take a break and you come back in, and you're right, they're just I don't know, they're just having those, you can't be what you can't see. So and then being real with it and saying it's really hard, or these things I've had to change, because you're looking after someone else. And I think there's the time issue thing, there's like the ideas of what mothers are supposed to be, and the demonization of some of that, or like who should be working, all those things. It is a really big issue in the music industry as well. In the company I worked at before, I was the first person to ever take maternity leave.
No.
The wider company had, but yeah, so that was, and just like the conversations around that, and just like ideas of like what feminism is as a mother, and like, and all those conversations. And I think, people like Annie Mac wrote that book, like people are talking about motherhood in a different way, and in a political way, and in a just like nurturing way. And I think there's a lot of energy and knowledge to be gained from it. But I think working with somebody who has become a parent at the same time and then making art about it is like such a brilliant way of like learning about yourself and that process, and like, and then I don't know, a lot of companies just kind of like, I think, I make a joke about this, but if I'd taken a year off and learned how to be an NTS DJ, that would have probably helped my career more than becoming a parent, which I think is ridiculous. Because like the idea of becoming a parent, learning how to nurture. What do you do if you're an artist manager? You're helping them. No, you're not helping babies, but you're helping people nurture and look after their souls and their art, which is about. So to me, it's just, there was a moment where I was like, oh fuck, all of this is like connected. And no one really explained that before. Before it'd just be like, it's gonna be fucking hard, and you're never gonna work again. It was all that fear.
Did you have those thoughts?
Yeah, I had those fears, and I waited right until it was like, I can probably have one and I'll be okay, So I think it's just, I'm not saying I would have had one younger, but there is this like, we've got to get on with our lives and like make it in the industry, and then we can take a break to have a child, There are other models or other ways but our industry doesn't, you're expected to be out late, all these things. It doesn't really harbour women staying. So was that kind of your
thinking? Were you like, I want to get to like this position where I'm
higher
definitely.
up,
more comfortable, then have a child?
Yeah, it was definitely not. And there wasn't anyone around me who was really doing it. And then there's people around you who you're like, oh my God, I really respect the way that you're approaching motherhood. And, and some people you can really see it as a really radical, you're bringing up the new generation, you know, and like how you teach them about the world and stuff is important, you know. And also mothering is like a verb, you know, it's not just for the you know, the children in your life, it's your friends, you know, all these things. I think there's so much to gain from it as well. But yeah, the fear was definitely, you know, there really.
Did you feel supported?
Yeah, definitely. Like the company I worked for were like, felt all very supportive on paper, you know, all these things. So that was good. But it's just, I think you're just so scared of it before you do it, you know. So just like, I'm going to take a year off from work. No one will think. I remember TikTok blew up about 4 years ago while I was on. I came back and I was like, one thing I did do actually, which I really advise people who are going off for a while, is when I was coming back to work, I kind of emailed like 20 people I knew in the industry, and I was like, what the fuck has happened this year? Who has been big? It was like Billie Eilish. It was like, you know, everything from like underground stuff. And I got this spreadsheet of all of this stuff. And I was like, and then some other mothers were like, I should do that. So I'm just like, just to share that knowledge, to support someone to go back in to work. Because sometimes it's just like knowing these, you know, the cultural things, that capital that we all have to know to work in the music industry. Anyway, I could talk about this for ages. It's probably a different panel, but yeah.
No, that's really interesting. And as I said, yeah, just inspiring to see women like yourself who have amazing careers. And of course you can still be a mother and then have an amazing career. I feel like I feel like in the past it felt like you had to like choose motherhood or choose your career. But why couldn't you do both, you know?
It's totally possible. And I think, especially in London, it's like, it's the variation that's so fun. Like I'm doing one thing with my daughter, this other insane, and then you're like in a club at 2 a.m, you know, like you're like, how is this connected? You know, but it, you know, it's just like people in London are doing that, all kinds of things. I think that exists, so that's helpful, you know.
Yeah, do you think she'll be in music?
We'll see. She does have a band called Hot Squash. No. It's a bit of a punk band. Shouts Hot Squash. So yeah. But yeah, like I say, like, you know, you said your friend sent the video. She sees me looking at music videos in the edit, you know, before they're going on, and she meets some of the artists, you know, that I work with, and it just becomes, Yeji's just bought her a t-shirt that from her merch that says Bass Angel. I was going to give it to, you know, all that stuff, and it's just like, she's going to go home and be like, Bass Angel.
That is so cute.
All that stuff, so yeah.
I want to touch on mental health as well, because I feel like it's something that we kind of dip into in these conversations, but for someone like you, Leo, who you talk about it so openly and frankly in your music, and you mentioned your mental health charity as well, like, do you think the industry has enough, I guess, space to address and really actually prioritise like artists' well-being, something as simple as that?
I think it's very fashionable to have conversations about mental health now, but all of the conversations are so surface level. And so people will be like, oh, you know, if you're struggling, you know, have a bath, go for a walk, eat a chocolate bar. And it's like, hun, that is not gonna cut it. Like I'm not well. Do you know what I mean? I'm fine at the moment, but, you know, I think, yeah, a lot of the conversations are just so surface level, and people do it to look good and to tick a box and to put something on their socials about, you know, mental health week, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it's not a week. It's like, you know, International Women's Day. It's not a day. It should be a lifestyle where we uplift people who need it. I think more is being done, and I think in general it is improving. But I think even the lifestyle of a musician or a DJ, like, or even working in the industry, like I speak to people, especially in events, they're at stuff every night, and like some people can handle that and their heads can take that and other people can't. And like basically in 2019 I had like a breakdown, and I called up this mental health charity. It's very well known in the UK, and they had this helpline where you could talk to them. And so before I was literally like crying like a baby down the phone, and at the start of the call she was like, oh, I just wanted to double check, do you make at least 50% of your income through music? And at the time I didn't, as most independent artists, like we're all in the same boat. And so I said no, and she was like, I'm really sorry, we can't help you then, because this is a charity, this is a helpline for musicians. And I was like, I am a musician, I'm having a breakdown right now and I need to talk to someone. But she was like, no, we can't do it. And so I understood, and so on the phone I was just like, I get it, but also I think you need to take into account the fact that, you know, there are a lot of in my world, like independent artists, writers, producers who are having to work 2-3 shit jobs that they don't want to do to fund their music, because as you were saying earlier, it's really expensive, like it's a lot. And because of that, like I set up White Noise, the charity, and we provide, this isn't a plug, but we provide...
No, plug away, it's a great thing, it is.
But we provide funding for therapy for independent artists and writers. And I just thought, like, that is so messed up, you know, that there's this help that's supposedly there, but actually you can't access it. It's like, that is not right. And like, after that call, in 2020, I was diagnosed with bipolar. And even looking back now, I'm just like, that is messed up. Like, I was literally having a mental health crisis. I think it's so messed up that, yeah, that resource is there, but actually most musicians, especially in the pop world, because we don't make as much money, the lower down we are, can't access it. So yeah, but it is getting better, and I think it's good that more people are talking about it. I think like a lot of people talk about like depression and anxiety, which are obviously more common, but I've noticed people, my friend was diagnosed with OCD not that long ago, and now he's starting to like speak out about that more, which I think is really good. And obviously I talk about having
I
bipolar, don't like to bang on about it, but I actually
but it's
do.
important to actually hear actually what it's like and the reality.
Yeah, and I think I actually think like it's really good because, for example, like I've had a lot of support from Radio 1 like over the last year or so, and I did this interview with Jack Saunders and he was asking me questions about it, and at the end I thought, like, what an amazing thing to be able to talk about this on national radio, like, and actually, and people contacted me after, like I got some people following me on Instagram and saying like, oh, I heard you talk about this, like I have bipolar too and really related to your tunes, and I was like, what an amazing thing. And so I think more people are making an effort, but I think we need to go deeper than just surface level, like have a bath or read a book. And sometimes, yeah, that helps, but actually, you know, if you go through stuff, then I think it is deeper than that. And then if you also do have like a mental illness on top of that, then, you know, it's a lot. But as women, as trans people, as, you know, people who aren't white, like, you know, those people who come from marginalised backgrounds, like they just go through more stuff as it is. Do you know what I mean? Like going through everyday life, like, you know. And so I think it's really important to take that into account as well. And I think, like, I guess that's why having friends who get it, like, does make a difference.
I want to talk about like online abuse, because I thought
An easy one.
start gently.
We're going soft for the final question.
No, just because I feel like, again, like I've on how many live streams or videos or whatever do you see, and it is often like non-men, like women and non-binary people and trans people, and there are comments that, like, it's not even about the music, it's just slagging off how they look, what they're wearing. She's not even mixing. For my Mix Mag Lab, like, in general, most of the comments were positive, and then these guys just cropped up being like, yeah, she's not even doing anything, or like, I can't even see the signal through the mixer, like, as if...
Like, what? Like, just enjoy the music.
Like
it's not that deep.
Like, but also, because in that particular clip, I'm not mixing, I'm just dancing and having a good time. Sorry.
Well, I think men love to like assert their dominance and knowledge on female and non-binary people because they're like, why are you doing that? I should be doing that. Well, get up off your ass and do it then.
Yeah.
Like, it's not my fault I'm in this position and you're sitting at home in front of your laptop watching it.
Have you experienced any?
I don't usually mix with headphones. And for some reason, people are really like astounded by this, and they're like, she's not even mixing, she's not even using headphones. It's like, I'm not using headphones because I'm really good. Like,
Yeah, you don't need them.
And like, I've honestly said this, it's like, I know my music, and like, I don't necessarily need to explain to people why I don't use headphones, but people think that there is like a very specific way to DJ or play like electronic music live, and when you don't stick to that script, suddenly you're not doing anything. And it's like, I'm not sitting here pressing play on a pre-recorded mix, like I am actually doing something. But again, it's part of being marginalised online. Like a lot of the time you just can't look at, someone will always have something to say. I could have went and used headphones, someone would have had something to say.
Yeah, there's always something.
Like, you can't win.
But I feel like if you compare, like, for like,
Like
No,
the
literally,
headphones
yeah.
aren't even plugged in. The mixer's not plugged in. Actually, everything's turned off.
You should
She's
actually
not
do
doing
one where you
anything.
just press play and then for the whole thing you're just like this.
No,
Yeah.
like actually, like
That would actually be
Jazz
so
hands.
funny.
jazz hands. So this month is celebrating International Women's Day, International Women's Month. Like, how do we feel about that existing in the first place?
I think these things need to exist, of course, but then on the flip side of it, it's like, oh, why do we only have to dedicate a specific amount of time to a specific section of society? The same with Black History Month and things. Like, these things do bring about positivity, but also it is kind of an excuse to say, oh, we can just talk about this for this month, and then, oh, let's just not talk about it anymore.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Or it's like Pride when like certain companies will like have
Yeah.
a rainbow flag outside, and then that's literally it.
Yeah. I think it's a really good thing because we obviously need it, but my hope is that one day we won't need it.
Yeah.
That's obviously the ideal, isn't it? One day. Yeah, exactly. Like for whoever it is, hopefully people can just be allowed to be people and be given more equal opportunities. And hopefully one day it will be a non-issue.
I think it is also good to dedicate a specific amount of time to something because then it just makes people more aware of it. But it's about keeping that awareness up out with the time span of this specific event. Yeah.
I mean, for me, every day is International Women's Day. You know, these conversations, I just love it. Okay, well, let's sort of go to a positive close, shall we? We've spoken about a lot, but I think it is true to say that we are, you know, progress is being made, and it's exciting as well. Like for me, it's like my daily motivation to do things to try and have a positive impact. And I think, you know, we've seen with some of the stats, like things are getting more positive. There's a bit of work to go, but I think that's something at least you can be happy about, like, is that we are in the right direction. Like, are there any positive changes that you guys have seen over the years in our industry?
I think, and not to make things about myself, but I think even my success as a Black trans woman has been really inspiring because I really did not think that like anything that I have done out within the past couple of years was possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like,
Well, that makes me very happy.
That's really cool.
thanks.
Actually,
Because I think even just with when I sit down and actually think about it, it is really incredible because I've never seen anyone look like me do this. And I know that if I was younger and I had seen myself in this position, I would have been more, not only just aware of my own identity, but aware that like things like this could happen. So I'm very happy. I'm very proud to be able to possibly be that for someone else. Yeah.
that's great. Tiger?
It's a big question. I guess I feel really, it's really great that I guess all the people here and lots of people we know are starting, they're like doing the work, the capitalist work, but also like on the side or as part of their job, setting up communities, setting up foundation, you know, all these ideas. And like, I think if more of the music industry was able to do that, there would be more change, you know. And I think, you know, it's hard because those things are often done with your free time, you know, at the end of days, all this, so it's extra work. But I think, yeah, if everyone put 5% of their time, you know, into those things, I do think that we would see more change. But that is to be positive about it. There are more people doing stuff, you know, and like companies being like, oh, you know, with the ESEA music. And I just don't think 5 years ago they'd have been like, we don't, you know. So I think it you know, it definitely is changing, you know.
Leo?
Loads. I think in my world where I'm from, the thing that I am most excited about is the amount of female and non-binary producers coming through. Even like when I started making tunes, and I remember I would produce like a demo and people would say, oh, why don't you learn production? And I'd just be like, nah, can't be arsed. Whereas then a few years ago I was like, no, actually I'm going to do it because I had mates who were doing the same thing and I was like, I am going to do it. And now I'm a sick producer. And that I'm not meaning to blow my own trumpet, but toot,
do it.
you know? And yeah, I think that's really cool. Like there are more female and non-binary producers coming through, and they're making amazing, varied, cool music.
Final question, just like really quick bit of advice that I guess you wish you'd known when you were starting out in this industry. I'll go first, actually. I wish that I had more confidence at the start, and confidence just to actually say what I wanted to say and believe in myself and not be afraid of what other people would think. I think there were a few barriers up initially.
I think just because we were talking about it earlier, I guess I wish I'd known that I didn't need to drink, you know, or like partake in any of that for my own health and sanity long term, I think. So I think, yeah, that expectation. So I think if someone had said that when I was 23 or 24, that would have been quite helpful, I think.
That's a really good one.
I would say trust your gut, because it's going to lead you in the right direction. And also have fun. Just have fun. Like, this is like, it's going to make like it's the best job in the world. Just enjoy it for what it is. Yep.
Great.
Yeah, mine are the same as you. Trust your gut, because if it feels right, then it is. Don't be too swayed by what other people think. And yeah, just enjoy it, because yeah, if you're not enjoying it, literally, what's the point? And obviously it's hard. My other advice to myself is just hang on and just be really resilient, because it is hard work. But the good bits are amazing. And so yeah, I just say like enjoy the good bits.
Great. All right, everyone. Thank you
Yay,
so
thanks,
much.
Thank you.
Great to
Thank
chat.
you.
Woo!
Clap, 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 clap.